My life had become so miserable, using every day, drunk every night. I was a bad employee, bad husband, son, father, guilt and the shame. I was suicidal. I tried to grab a cop's gun and I was begging them to shoot me. I finally had hit rock bottom. I knew I needed to change. And even then, I didn't quite change enough.
What's going on, everybody? That was tonight's guest, podcast host, and author, Todd Rennebohm. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks coming at you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty Number 6 territory, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Let's bring in Todd. Hey, Todd.
Hello, Daniel. Hello.
How's it going?
I'm really good. Thank you for asking me to be on here this morning.
Well, yeah, I did. It was this morning, and I appreciate you. We had a last-minute cancellation, and I'm really glad that you were like, yeah, let's do it, because I was really not looking forward to having to spend my entire Sunday hunting down a guest. So thank you. You are the saver of Sundays.
My pleasure. Yeah. Well, you're lucky I'm an attention whore.
Yeah. Aren't we all?
Oh, well.
So is there anything that you would like to say before we jump in tonight?
Oh, what could I say? Nothing off the top of my head, I guess. I'm just looking forward to tonight, and I hope everyone has a nice time listening.
I just got to jump in real quick and say, wicked shirt, Todd. I love it.
Thank you.
You know how to rock the wild shirts.
$1 church sale.
All right, enough about shirts. It's time to go.
This is Hard Knox Talks.
Okay, before we dive in, I just want to let our viewers and listeners know that tonight's live production is title sponsored by Residents in Recovery Society in Lloydminster, Alberta. Residents in Recovery provides a judgment-free access to a safe, supportive, and therapeutic recovery environment. To learn more, you can check them out at www.residentsinrecovery.com. Super grateful for them. This is the very first episode they have supported, so thank you guys for helping us continue to make a bunch of noise. So
thanks, Residents in Recovery.
So Todd, let's talk about this book. You wrote a book called Sometimes Daddy Cries. There it is, right?
Indeed,
there. We'll put you on full screen so everyone can see it. There it is. So tell us a little bit about this book. First of all, why a children's book?
I think because when I was going through some of my biggest struggles, I felt like a failure as a husband and as a father. And I kind of didn't know what my kids were going through. Like my wife and I didn't really have real good communication with them as to what was going on with me. I'm sure it was really scary. Well, I mean, we did have good communication, but not until the proverbial shit hit the fan. It wasn't like we had an open conversation about mental health or anything like that prior to that. So I thought, well, this would be a good tool for parents to at least kind of initiate that conversation. So if something does happen, or they see their mother or father or whoever, some loved one go through a mental health crisis, then they're already somewhat educated, and the conversation's already kind of started, so they can just continue on with it, really.
How old were you, or how old were they when you were, because like when you wrote this book, you were in a pretty dark spot. Like, how old were they at the time?
So let's see, I think they were 10 and 12. They're now 18 and 16. And I, like, the day I wrote the first draft, it was actually the last night I ever drank. And I was like, yeah, I was suicidal and miserable, and I came into my house. Actually, the first draft was almost like, I think it was almost a suicide note, really. And then instead of harming myself, I woke my wife up, and she got me some help, and I went to the hospital and started my recovery process. Yeah, what was the other part of the question? How old were they?
How old were they? Yeah. And like, I guess we could like change the question a little bit, and it's been sort of rolling around in my head here. Now, when you wrote this first draft, you just mentioned it was the last time you ever drank, you were suicidal, you were all of these things. Did you
Super hammered.
Yeah, did you sit down and were super
I was.
hammered?
I
So
was.
did you sit down, you're like, "Well, I think I'll write a kid's book," or was this supposed to be like last message to your kids, or like what was it when you sat down and put pen to paper?
Well, unfortunately, because I was so hammered, I don't fully remember my thought
Wake up in the morning,
process.
who wrote this amazing book?
Yeah. But I do remember, like, so the last couple of years of my drinking, using, I went from like partying and being super social to like just hanging out in my garage alone and doing it.
Mhm.
I already had a suicide attempt a couple of years before, and that's kind of when I just isolated after that. So I do remember sitting in the garage and like coming up with this idea of a kid's book. Um, I don't remember if there was something that triggered it or something that spurred it or inspired it or what it was, um, but I did, yeah, I just came into the house and typed it out on my computer in a Word document, and then
Mhm.
went to the bathroom and I was like, okay, what's going to happen now? And next thing I know, my wife is helping me and stuff, and I don't I don't really remember asking her for help or anything, um, but yeah,
Helping you with the book?
no, sorry, helping me with the suicidal thoughts and the
Mm.
getting me to the hospital and figuring out what the hell to do with me and stuff like that. But it actually took 4 years to finish. I was 4 years sober by the time that I actually finished the book.
Mm.
And I don't know if it was, I mean, it's a kid's book, right? It's not like it's super um
Deep?
wordy or anything, you know. But I think I wasn't ready to, but it was still very therapeutic to write and to
Of
work
course.
on it and stuff. So I
Yeah.
think it took me 4 years to like get myself in a good headspace to actually be able to finish it. Because I kept, coming back to it and changing words and changing stuff.
Mhm.
And then eventually I talked to an artist, Jesse Stuick, who did the illustrations.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, I think I was finally in a good enough place where I was like, okay, I think I can complete this thing now. Plus it
So
was
was
COVID, so I had nothing to do.
Hmm. So was it a matter like was it a matter of, because I know like when I get into my creative mode, like I can tweak and tune and everything like forever. Like did it just have to come to a place where you just sort of had the courage to like, okay, I'm ready to do it. Like the courage came, or you felt it was actually finished?
I think it just needs to be done.
Mm.
So recently I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and I have many a project I've started and never
Mhm.
finished. And I was like, I really want to see this, you know, be
Mhm.
finished.
So now that we've sort of painted a picture as to how the book came to be, why don't we like take a step back and like, because we've already talked how you were in a dark place, you were suicidal, all of these dark things. Let's talk about what led up to that. Like, why don't we go back to the like beginning? Did you start drinking early on? Like, did you grow up around alcoholism or drug use?
Um, Alcoholism, I did. I remember my dad going to AA meetings when I was really young. Um, he wasn't. I mean, when I was a kid, I never really saw him drunk. Maybe a handful of times, but it was in my family. Both my grandpas were in World War II, and they had a rough go, and I saw them drink, and I have like uncles and cousins and stuff that were big drinkers and partiers and users of different
Of
drugs
different
and stuff.
things? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and there's also, I'm pretty sure there's mental illness in my family too, depression and anxiety and stuff. I say pretty sure, but I'm positive there is. It's just no one diagnosed. Back
Yeah.
then nobody went to a therapist or anything. Um, and so, yeah, actually I had bad anxiety when I was like grade 5. I was
Mhm.
diagnosed with a stomach ulcer. Like, that's an old man disease, and I'm like 5 years old with so much anxiety and worry that I have a stomach ulcer. And of course, back then, I'm 45 years old. So back then, um, they just treated the physical part of it. They didn't they didn't they just assumed I was. My mom called it, I had a nervous stomach.
Mm.
They didn't call it anxiety then, and they didn't care how to fix it. They just, as long as my stomach stopped hurting. Um, so that was kind of the beginning, and then into high school, I was introduced to alcohol when I don't know if I was 12 or 13. I was grade 7 anyway. And I remember getting drunk the first time, and it was amazing.
Like I always say, like the first 5 minutes were like amazing, you know.
Yeah.
And then I chased
Yeah,
it
it
for
was
23
cool.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the weird thing was, I had a kind of a sexually traumatic thing happen the first time I got drunk. But the magic with the alcohol for me, and I noticed this throughout my younger years drinking, like nobody talked about anything the next day that sucked, right? Like we didn't wake up the next morning and it was like, hey, remember when I did this to you?
Hey,
It was like, wait,
let's
what?
let's unpack that a little bit here.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, that was crazy. Yeah, we had so much fun. We made a campfire, and like we talked about all the cool stuff. It was like,
Yeah.
And I remember even the dream. Like I remember thinking, what the hell was going on? So I was like, well, cool. I guess if it did happen, no one's talking about it, so that's good because I don't want to talk about that. That was,
Mhm.
I'm freaked out about what happened. But then the next couple times I drank, there was nothing traumatic or anything, but
So was it like right away, like
good time.
when you drank again? Like was it like I can't wait to get loaded again, or did some time go by?
I don't exactly remember. I don't think it was right away. It was maybe a few weeks or a couple months or something.
Mhm.
But by the time I was like 15, it was like every weekend or twice a weekend.
Mhm.
You binge drinking, like you do in high school. And being in a small town, it was like, there's nothing else to do anyway. And I
And
kind
that's
of felt,
kind of true, especially back
yeah,
then, you know.
I'm
absolutely.
sorry. I gotta
Oh,
interject
hang
here
on.
because
There we
this
go.
is like not the
Oh,
first
we go,
time.
Donna.
Oh yeah, here we go. Just show's over now.
Way to go, Todd. I don't know what you said, but here we go.
Oh, God.
So I just have to address the fact
Mhm.
that because I hear this frequently about the whole small town, nothing better to do. At 15, you're doing the whole weekend binge thing. I'm a city girl, man, and it was the same thing. We had tons of options, but you know, we were sneaking into the
What's
bar.
wrong with you?
And if we got busted at the door at the bar, it was a bonfire. So it's same shit in the city, man.
I suppose.
Okay, well, thanks for crushing that for us.
Anyway.
Yeah, and I don't know where to go from there.
Okay, well, whatever. Anyhow,
Yeah.
but for me growing up in a small town, it was like the thing for me why the small town part affected my end of it was because you only have a handful of people to hang out with.
Mhm.
And I never felt a real super good connection with even my best friends. I always felt like I was different than them or something. I was on a different wavelength somehow or something. But drinking was that one connection. So
Mhm.
if I grew up in a city and there was like 300 kids in my class, maybe I would have found someone that I gelled with.
Yeah, well, here's
better or something.
something. We got a comment coming in here. So from Tiffany saying that it was the same growing up in Beverly Hills. So our theory is shot
I guess okay.
shit.
So I finally figured out the point that I was actually trying to make there.
Okay.
And that is that we are united. That wasn't meant to be a divisive statement. It was just that it doesn't seem to matter where you are, man. If you're going to go down that path, that's kind of your fate, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Fair. But yeah, maybe if I grew up in the city, it would have been the same. Maybe not. I don't know. But
yeah, probably. It was. I mean, like when I was 15 and I 16, I moved to Saskatoon, and that's where it really fell off for me. So like, I don't know why everyone's like, oh, because a small town, nothing else to do. Because like, and I'm living proof of that myself, actually. Now that I think of it.
Well, actually, maybe if I moved to a bigger city, maybe instead of alcohol, it would have been like something
more,
even more devastating. Yeah. Who knows?
So at least it was only a small town, and we were alcoholics.
We went cow tipping instead of whatever they do in the city.
Whatever they do, the weirdos do. Tiffany says, "United we stumble."
Yeah, whatever they do in Beverly Hills when you're 15.
Yeah, I don't know. Tip Lamborghinis.
Beverly Hills, Alberta.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So how old
Yes.
were you? How old were you when you started to realize that like maybe this was a problem?
With the alcohol,
Hmm.
um, well, I might back up a bit because I did start getting depressed when I was around 17. That's when I started feeling the mental health effects. Um, and I knew that was a problem right away. But with the drinking, I think it was my second week of treatment.
Yeah, I caught alcoholism in treatment myself, actually. Now that we're thinking about
Uh,
it.
it was like, um, I had thought about it before that, I guess, a few times, and um, so I did have a suicide attempt a couple years before the year I quit, or the night I quit drinking,
Mhm.
and that was a bit of a wake up call with my drinking a bit. Oh God, I'm doing it again. I'm burping.
Well, you're
But
drinking pop, man. You're drinking like
yeah,
Coca-Cola. Oh, I don't know.
I don't know why I'm.
Yeah.
Anyway, when I was I was in the psych ward after my suicide attempt, and I was there for 2 weeks, and twice someone from AA came in, and both times I like shooed them away, and I was like, what the hell were they doing in here? Like, I, I'm I'm depressed, and I might be crazy and depressed, but who the hell told them to come in here? Like, I'm not an
Mhm.
alcoholic. But I actually ended up I quit drinking for a while after that because I was like, well, maybe I'm not an alcoholic, but if I am having depression, maybe I shouldn't be drinking, right? I'm on antidepressants and I'm drinking a depressant, so I kind of quit drinking for a while. Um, and so I didn't think I was an alcoholic even then. And then I started drinking again because it was like, I don't know, a year or something later.
Mhm.
I thought, well, shit, if I can do it on my own, and I, I'm not going to meetings, I'm not doing anything productive other than not drinking, I mustn't be an alcoholic.
How was that year?
By the way,
Was it
I
a good year?
was it was okay because I was smoking pot like a chimney.
Mm.
So I kind of upped. I actually made a conscious effort to smoke more marijuana. I was like, I'm depressed, and this is supposed to be good for depression and anxiety. So I'm
Was
gonna.
it? Was it?
No,
No.
no, no. Um, and so I just started smoking more and more. I was like, I'm anxious all the time now, so I just have to smoke more, I guess. I was
It
like,
made me
oh,
anxious too. Totally.
yeah, I just was jonesing more and needing it more.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, that's what my anxiety was, 90% of it. So anyway, yeah, I started drinking again after it was like Christmas time, and I was like, everybody was sipping nice, liqueurs and peppermint shit and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, let me have one. And like within months, I'm like 2 months, I'm like doing it as often as I was before, like,
Mhm.
uh, which was nightly, and binge drinking 2 to 3 times a week. And but now I'm also smoking pot like a chimney. On top of that, um, I was I was not a good partner. I wasn't like the intro said. I was doing really stuff that was like not on my moral compass. I was, so then you add shame and guilt on top of that, and I'm already depressed and anxious, and so yeah, shit came to a head that night that I decided to drink all the alcohol in the house, so that there was none, so I
Mm.
could, so
So I could get
yeah,
sober?
even yeah, so I
Yeah.
could tell my wife the next day, it's like, hey, I drank all the booze, so let's try to keep booze out of the house. But what ended up happening was I wrote a kid's book and was suicidal. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah,
So
it all worked out.
before we get too far ahead, like
Yeah, yeah,
looking
yeah.
back now, or maybe even when you were in it, what were you
Mhm.
running from? Like what were you self-medicating yourself away from?
You know, I think some of it was, I mean, there's no one simple answer, right? Just like any complicated question, but some of it was um trauma, I think, some childhood trauma stuff, like some of the sexy time stuff I was talking about.
Mhm.
Some of it was um well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I 2 months ago I was diagnosed with ADHD, and it was I think it was a symptom of my ADHD. Like not
Mm.
100%, but it was a big part of it. Like I've since been being diagnosed, I've been looking back at my life. I've been living my life backwards, looking through my life and going like, oh my God, that makes so much sense why I didn't feel like I fit in when I was a kid. Why I beat myself up all the time because I was having anxiety and shit because I wasn't fitting in. I didn't think my brain doesn't work like other people's. But instead of being like, oh, that's because I'm ADHD, it's like, what? I'm a freak. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. Whatever. So I'm constantly like every 2 years, I'm working somewhere else. I'm bouncing around from job to job. I'm looking at friends that are like successful people that are doing really well, and I'm like, man, I'm starting from the bottom again from some company that just I'm just doing these Joe jobs all the time. So yeah, I'm constantly beating myself up and anxiety, depression, um, and alcoholism and addiction is big and ADHD. So I think I was running away from all that, and
Mm.
since I've been diagnosed and seeing an ADHD coach, I've been seeing an ADHD coach for a while before I was even diagnosed,
Mm.
and like it's the best therapy I've had ever because they're coming at it from
That lens.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not all that different than, traditional therapy, but for
Mhm.
whatever reason, just coming at it from that different perspective, it's been life-changing, man. Now I'm on
Got a
ADHD meds and
got a comment
comment.
coming in here. We got a comment from Erica. Erica, thank you so much for the comment. Erica says, getting that diagnosis tremendously helped my growth in recovery. Todd, can you relate? Oh, and so Nicole can relate as well.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's been like, so before, like all this life stuff has been like, it's part of me. And it's just like, I'm an idiot. I can't keep a job. I'm a flake. I'm lazy. I'm all this stuff. And now it's like, I can separate myself from it and just look at it as a diagnosis, be like, oh, I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD and cool.
What's
And that's fine.
neurodivergent for anyone who might not know? And that someone might be me.
So people with autism and ADHD are considered neurodivergent because there's a lot of overlap with ADHD and autism. I think it just means, so neuro is like brain, divergent is just kind of different.
Hmm.
I guess so. We have a different brain than a neurotypical person.
Oh,
And um so yeah, we just for I like for me when I thought of ADHD, I thought of like the super hyper kid in school, right?
hmm.
And that wasn't me. I had good grades. I focused in school and whatever. But yeah, it's like being on TikTok and some other things. Like I've started seeing other people's reels and talking to people with ADHD, and the way they were talking about it, I was like, well, that sounds precisely like me. Like, what the hell? Like,
Hmm.
so then, yeah, I it took me a long time to get an assessment because it's a pain in the ass to find someone that'll do it for you. But I eventually did it. I went through the just Learning Disorder Association of Saskatchewan, I think it's called, or
Hmm.
LDAS. I went through them. I got funding through them. They helped find funding for me because it's cost like $2,000 or something. Uh, but I had to sit on a long waiting list. But I was like, I don't care. I'm 45 years old.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that this is, the ball's rolling.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was like an intensive assessment. It wasn't like you went into the doctor's office for 10 minutes. Like there was tests and exams and phone
Hmm.
calls and all this stuff. And it was like, they're like, dude, you are big time ADHD. I was like, ah! I was so happy. I was like, yes, like, okay, this explains so much.
So tell us about some of the thoughts now. Like we still haven't gotten up to the point in your story where you had a encounter with a police officer and your brother. But looking back
Mm-hmm.
now, knowing what you know now about ADHD, what was it? What symptoms were you displaying that were causing you the most problems? Like leading up to your attempt?
Um, I think so some of it's spontaneity. It's like I was constantly chasing happiness. It's the dopamine chase.
Mm.
That So that's one thing that ADHD people have is like we don't produce as much dopamine, so we're constantly needing to find it. So that was one thing. So like yeah, I don't want to get too personal with some of this stuff because not everyone
Wow,
knows
okay.
everything.
Mhm.
But yeah, so it was that kind of stuff. I was very
Mhm.
spontaneous, and doing things that felt good that were maybe not morally good, or
Mhm.
to me, I didn't find them morally good. So then, like I said, it caused shame and guilt and everything else. Um, so it kind of came to a head one day when I was gonna host a get together, actually a party. I was gonna have some people over, but my brother texted me or called me actually, and he said I need help moving something. So I went to his house and we moved something, and then we had a few beer in his garage. Um, we didn't get loaded or anything. We just had a few beer, and I came home, and my wife was kind of annoyed because we were supposed to get ready for this for people to come over, and for whatever reason, um, that was it. I just kind of popped, and to this day, I don't remember everything. Some of it's stitched together from what people have told me, and some of it's just my own slight foggy memories. But I ended up just punching my face as hard as I could over and over again, and my wife like grabbed the kids and ran out of the house. Um, so I was in the house by myself. I don't remember much other than like uncontrollably bawling and like putting my head through walls and like smashing stuff with my head. And I was convinced she ran out and she was never coming back. I was never going to see my family again. Um, for the year before this, so the whole year up to this moment, like nightly, I was pushing knives against my wrists and against my neck. I had places at work that, they ask you, do you have a plan when you talk about suicide? And it's like, man, I have a plan for any point in my day. It doesn't matter where I am. If I'm at work, on my way to work, at home, if I'm in my garage. I mean, I had plans all over the place. So I'd practiced enough and I'd obsessed about it enough that this was going to be it. And yeah, I started pulling a knife out, and next thing you know, my brother walks in the house because my wife's a smart lady, and went and got my brother, and he's a big dude, and he came at me. He's like, "What the hell's going on?" And I swung the knife at him because I thought he was going to try and stop me. So I swung the knife at him. He backed up, and I had the knife over my head. I wasn't just gonna like cut myself. I mean, I was gonna cut my arm off. And as the knife was up in the air, my brother like punched me in the head and got on top of me and pinned me down, and yelled for his wife, who I didn't even realize was there. And they called 911. My sister was there too. Like, I don't know if I was having like a psychotic episode, or I just dissociated so far. I don't know what the term is exactly, but that's what was happening in my brain. But um, my sister comes running up. I'm on the ground with my brother pinning me, and she comes up to me with my little marijuana pipe and like is feeding me dope to calm me down. Which, I mean, she didn't know what to do. They
Which,
didn't know what to do.
I mean, might not have been like the worst idea. Like if we're being real here, I mean, that might
Yeah,
have helped.
exactly. Yeah, well, it didn't hurt.
Yeah.
You know.
Now I'm mad because there's no Doritos.
So then the cops come in. I believe there was two for sure, and they start roughing up my brother. They see this big guy on a less bigger guy. They're that knife on the floor and shit. They smell weed. They're like, "What the fuck?" So they start grabbing him, and they start arguing and fighting, and then um so then they realize what the hell's going on. They're trying to grab me, and I get a hand loose. And the whole time I'm like yelling at them to shoot me. I'm trying to kill my brother. I'm out. I should be dead. And I've never heard of suicide by cop until afterwards.
Mm.
Um, and it was never a plan. But I was like, well, there's guys in my house with guns. Like, I may as well let's see what happens here. Um, and of course they weren't going to shoot me. So I got a hand loose somehow, and I got my hand on one of their guns. I didn't slide it out of the holster or anything, but I just put my hand on their gun, and I mean, they didn't shoot me, but they sure
They didn't like
they
that,
made me.
eh?
They didn't like that, no.
Mm.
But they were very good at their job, and they got me wrapped up and hogtied and all that stuff, and I mean, it hurt. They were putting elbows and knees in places I didn't even know I had places, and I kept screaming at them, "Stop hurting me! Just kill me! Like, I don't want to hurt anymore. I'm tired of hurting. Shoot me, kill me." So anyway, then they hogtied me and threw
Did you
me
mean
into
it?
their.
Did, like, looking back now, like, did you mean it?
Oh man, I was so out of my mind. I don't know. I think so. Like I think I wanted to die. I don't know if I mean, if my brother wasn't there, I'm pretty sure I would have killed myself. Yeah. So yeah, I practiced enough, and I was like so out of my head. I was hoping to die. I think by the time the cops got there, I still wanted to die, but I don't know if I could have done it.
Hmm.
So I was willing to get shot, and I want to die, but I don't want to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I go back and forth with that feeling. Some days I did, some days I didn't, and over the next while, but they did, they did the right thing, and they took me to the hospital. But then, I had two cops in an ambulance with me, driving me to Regina. And the year before, it was almost exactly a year to that date, I took myself to the hospital and asked for help. I was already seeing therapists, and I was already on medication and stuff. But I went to the ER because I was having a mental health crisis, and they just told me to go home. Like, I sat in the ER for hours and hours and met with a psychiatrist, and he's like, yeah, we're not going to let you in. You basically have to attempt suicide before we'll let you in here. And, just go home, keep taking your meds, keep taking your therapy. And so then I felt like a complete idiot. I felt like like, it was so invalidating going and asking for help. So I was like, well, apparently I'm an idiot. There's nothing wrong with me. So I'm not going to ask for help anymore, because it felt like I went to the ER with a hangnail, and they were like, oh yeah, just put a Band-Aid on it and go home, So, which is, I mean, it's one thing to like, so maybe I didn't need the hospital, but they offered me nothing. They just said, keep doing what you're doing. So I kept doing what I was doing. And a year later, I end up in the hospital, handcuffed with two cops and strapped to a gurney.
Yeah.
It's strange. It's a strange thing. And oh man, you read it. I'm screwing up.
Yeah, you suck at podcasting. Sharon, thank you for the comment. It's always nice to see you, my friend. Sharon says it's a strange thing, and there are very little programs that are helpful.
Yeah. So about 6 years ago, I started advocating, and one of the reasons was because they were laying off a bunch of people at the psych ward. And I was like, what the hell? Like it was hard enough to get in there, and now they're laying people off that are working there. And when I was in there, you could see like people were overworked. So that whole incident got me kind of on my advocating thing. And some stuff's happened since then with our mental health system. But then, like a year ago or whatever it was, with that young guy went to the ER in Regina.
Yeah.
They kicked him out, and like 2 hours later, they found him floating in Wascana. So I'm like, what the hell? Like, nothing's changing. Like, or not changing fast enough anyway. Maybe things are changing, but not as much as I'd like them to.
Yeah. So what was
that's
it
disappointing.
Like? Well, yeah. I mean, it's no secret that it seems like mental health is perpetually something that is done off the side of some politician's desk there. You know what I mean? But I was at the premier's dinner a little while ago, and Scott Moe was up there, and he was doing his address. He was talking. He went off for an hour, and admittedly, some of the things he said sounded okay, but mental health did not even get an honorable mention. And that's deeply concerning to me.
Yeah.
So
I know
yeah.
it's all politics and bullshit. And, yeah.
So
yeah, I just saw.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just saw our mental health and addictions minister Everett Hinley the other day at a function, and it's like I can't dislike the guy, right? It's like but I dislike that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's his bosses aren't giving him a big enough budget, or if he's spending it on the wrong things, or I don't know, but it's just so frustrating.
Yeah. So you were you left off. You were tied to a gurney in a hospital. So what next?
So yeah, I know. I'm kind of telling my whole story, but I'm bouncing back and forth.
It's okay. It's fine. It's okay. We're shining light on ADHD this evening.
And Coke. ADHD and Coke.
Zero. Coke
Um,
zero. Coke zero.
Yeah.
Some people might
yeah,
be
I'm-
listening and not watching.
Right. For those of you on YouTube, cola.
And Coke.
Which is basically what ADHD meds are basically like meth.
Yes,
It's
but
a
we'll get to
stimulant.
that. We'll get to that. But
Yes.
we're not there. We're still tied to the gurney. We're not on the not
Okay.
on the prescription meth yet.
Okay. So yeah, I've strapped with the gurney. So then I went to the psych ward for a couple weeks. That's when people from like AA came to my room and I shooed them away and stuff. And then I quit drinking for a year on my own because I was like, well, I'm depressed. I shouldn't be drinking depressants.
Mhm.
So then I started drinking again, and then I kind of already told this part, but so then yeah, I was in the garage a couple years later in feeling sorry for myself and wanting to stop drinking, and it was really marijuana was probably my drug of choice actually, but it didn't seem to make me as depressed as alcohol did. It was definitely harmful. Um, and I tried to stop marijuana. Oh man, I don't know how many times. Like I knew I had a problem with marijuana. I
Mhm.
knew that because my dealer at the time, it's so weird that it's legal now, but my dealer at the time, he went on holidays and I was running out and I was like, okay, he's going to go on holidays. I'll run out. This will be a nice break. And, I won't get
It's
any more
easy to
because
think. It's easy to think how nice it's going to be when you still have weed, right? Like, oh, it'll be a nice break. Yeah.
Well, I was running out though, and I knew I was going to run out while he was gone. So I
Yeah.
thought, okay, I'll run out. He'll be gone. I can't buy anymore because my dealer isn't around, and I'll have a little break here for a week or whatever it was. Well, fuck me. It was like 4 hours, and I was like having panic attacks. I was pacing. I was like, maybe not panic attacks, but I was having high or high anxiety. I'm pacing around. I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to the city. She's like, what for? Like, it was just like random in the middle of the day. I'm going to Regina. I was like, I found someone in the city to sell me weed. I think I went 4 hours without it. So that was the day I was like, I might have a problem with marijuana.
Mhm.
So I tried quitting that. I don't know how many times. So anyway, the night that I was in the garage and I drank all the booze in the house. I came into the house and wrote the book, woke up my wife. She took me to the hospital and my doctor wanted me to go to detox in Regina. Um, because so that was the night I quit drinking, but I was still smoking weed. Even when I was in the hospital drying out, every few hours I was dipping out and smoking weed, and everybody in the hospital knew, like all the nurses and there's cameras and come in stinking whatever. And so my doctor was like, no more of that. Like, no, um, go to detox. I want you to go into rehab. I want you to start seeing a counselor and stuff. I was like, okay. So I went into went into detox, and I lasted about 4 hours there.
Mhm.
It was like the middle of the night. I bolted. I had a huge panic attack. I was bawling my eyes out. I had smoked just on the way there. So then they put me like they had a room for me upstairs, and in the basement they put you down there to dry out to sober up, and then you go upstairs. So it was a Friday night, and I was downstairs, and it's like I don't know if have you ever been there? The
Not
Regina
to the
Detox?
Regina one. I've been to the Larson house here in Saskatoon.
Man, it is. It's like you're in a fishbowl. It's like glass wall, and there's like EMTs and stuff, and nurses watching you through this glass wall, and then it's just a big room full of beds and like weirdos. It's like,
But Todd, you were there
it's
too,
like-
though.
I know. I think that's why I had a panic attack. I was like, oh my God.
I'm a
Okay,
weirdo.
is this what my life? Yeah, exactly. It's like, is this what my life has become?
Yeah.
And I had this big panic attack, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. So in the middle of the night, I bolted and I walked to my brother-in-law's house in my pajamas, and he answers the door like, "Hi, like, what the hell are you doing here?" So my dad picks me up and brings me back to Indian Head. And I come home and I'm telling my wife, like, hey, I quit drinking before for like a full year on my own. it's the booze, man. Booze is terrible, yeah, but I need to keep smoking weed. It helps with my anxiety and all this stuff and blah blah blah. And she's like, fine, yes, okay, you do that. Um, but pack your bags and get out though. You do whatever you want to. Actually, I don't care anymore. Like I can't watch you do this to yourself anymore. So again, I'm like, my dad picks me up, and I was like, what the hell am I gonna do? I didn't know what to do. I was so scared to get sober. I was so scared to stop smoking pot that I was almost willing to lose my family over it. And to the people that say marijuana isn't addictive or whatever, it's like, okay, maybe technically it isn't, but I'm telling you, I was addicted to the point that I was willing to lose my family. So I'm sitting at my mom and dad's house, and they're like, "So what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna move in with somebody? Like, what are you gonna do?" And my dad's like, "Tell you what, like, we have a room downstairs. You can move in with us." And that scared me straight. I was like, okay, there's no goddamn way am I living with my parents again. No offense to anyone that lives with their parents. It's just I'm not living with my parents. And I was like, I think I'd last a week and we'd all be dead. So I was like, okay, tell you what, take me back to the hospital and I'll beg the doctor to let me detox in my small town hospital. Because I felt safer there, right? All the staff. I'm a few blocks from home. My kids could see me. I'm not. It just seemed more comfortable, less anxiety. So that's what we did. He took me there. I spent 2 weeks there. The doctor's like, "You are not allowed to leave this hallway." Basically, he's like, "You're no more going outside." And so I was okay. And so after 2 weeks of that, they let me out. My wife was like, "Okay, cool." I came home and I started going to AA meetings, and that was kind of the first kind of major step of my recovery. And
Tell us about
I didn't.
Tell us about your first AA meeting. What was it like walking through the door?
Well, I was scared shitless. I had a cousin that just sobered up about a year before that. I'm not sure what his drugs of choice were exactly, but he was in Pine Lodge, and he convinced me to go to Pine Lodge because I wanted to go some other ones. I knew Pine Lodge. I just knew Pine Lodge was going to be rough, so I tried to convince my
Everyone
family to
knows
let me
that.
go. Yeah, tried to convince me to go to another one. So anyway, my cousin's like, "No, dude, go to that one." So I was waiting to get in there. So I was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to go to a AA meeting." And uh, my cousin at that time, he was like putting a lot of AA stuff on Facebook and whatever. And I just thought it was a cult. Like it was creepy to me. I was like, "What?"
Lots of people think that.
So yeah, so I walked in there into the meeting, and I didn't know who from my town was there or what was going to happen. And there was people I had no idea, right? People from my small town that were in there. That I was like, oh my god, this guy's in here. Or this guy's mom is in here, or whatever. So I sat down, and I thought someone was going to come up to me, talk to me right away, and be like, "Hey, this is what we do, and this is what to expect." And nobody did. They offered me coffee and a spot, and whatever. And I'm like, I also didn't ask, like, how does this work? And so the meeting just started, and and I was like, okay, interesting. And they started reading the steps, and the first step one, my life became unmanageable, and oh god, whatever the rest of it is.
I can't remember. I'm going to correct him, and then I can't remember it either.
Wow, this is bad. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. We were powerless over our addiction. Our lives have become unmanageable. There it is.
Right. Unmanageable and powerless. And I was like,
Mhm.
those two words just like, it was like a punch to my gut. I was like, that's exactly what I fucking feel like. My life has become unmanageable and I'm totally powerless because I've tried quitting so many times. I was willing to lose my family over weed. Like, what the fuck? Of course. Yeah, that's juicy. I like that one. And then, we did the whole meeting, and I'm not really keen on meetings. I don't know if that's an ADHD thing, but like it was over. It was like an hour, boom, done. I was like, oh, perfect. I hate meetings that go 2-3 hours long. This was like, ran tickety boo. It was very well organized. I was like, for someone with ADHD, I was like, this is a meeting.
Mhm.
This is well structured, and I know exactly what to expect, and I related with everyone's stories. And there was people from Pine Lodge on their last week came to our meetings, and so there was people in early recovery. It wasn't like it was me and a bunch of people that have been
Old
sober for
timers.
50 years. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I like that. So yeah, I kept coming back, and um, I kept coming back every week until I went to Pine Lodge, which was about 3 months later. And yeah, I walked into Pine Lodge, scared shitless, and it was fucking horrible. It was scary as hell. I hated it and I loved it, and I'm so grateful, and it was amazing. You know what I
Would you
mean?
go again?
It was so. Would I go again? Oh, I think everyone on earth should, addicted or not, you should go to a place like Pine Lodge. It's just good. It's a
Mhm.
good, hard look at yourself for a month. And yeah, it just teaches you good life skills. And yeah. But I went in there with a good mindset. It wasn't like, okay, let's see what this is all about. Or, I went in there right away surrendering to the process. I was like, I'm going to have an open mind. Whatever they say, I'm going to do. Um, I'll try to save judgments. You know, I'll try not to judge whatever they're saying or doing, or whatever, 30-year-old videos to make me watch.
Mhm.
Uh, but I was, so yeah, so I went in there with a good attitude, and I loved it. I fucking loved it. And
So
I, sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say about a year out of Pine Lodge, like I found a good job, and I was, things started to pick, like they say, like once you get sober, like things just start falling into place. And it was kind of true.
Mhm.
Um, so after about a year, the director at that time asked me to come and do some speaking once a month. So I did that for about a year, and then um, about a year of doing that, she then asked me to come join the staff. So I did that. I was there on weekends and evenings for a year or two, or until the fire, anyway.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, then so I was like, yeah, I was super grateful. It's just been a big part of my life. Like I even have I don't know if you can see the pine tree.
Hang on.
Where am
Hang
I?
on. Hang on. There you go. I know it's
Ah!
backwards. It's backwards. For those like
Oh,
yeah, it's hard. Anyways, yeah, there's
there's
a
a
pine
pine tree
tree.
there.
Yeah.
That's my little tattoo for Pine Lodge. So because I was just so grateful for what they did for me.
So where did the rubber hit the road for you? Like when before we get too far ahead, when you were in
Mhm.
treatment, was there a pinnacle moment where the light sort of the light switch went on?
Maybe not, like there was a bunch of mini ones throughout, but there was one big one where I think it was my second week. We had a weird group. A bunch of people left all at once. So then it was like my second week, and I was already group leader. And I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And it's a real cross section of society, Pine Lodge. And there was people that I would never, ever have a conversation with, let alone be roommates with and like hang out all day with,
Mhm.
if it wasn't for Pine Lodge. So there's like dudes from gang members, and um, just people from all over the place. Even like 70-year-old dude was in there. Like people that I would never otherwise talk to.
Mhm.
And this one guy was kind of intimidating, and I was like, oh my god. And he's asking me questions, and my group members are like, oh, you have to tell him this, and I'm like, oh my god, what the and yeah, the one night we were doing our homework, and I had a panic attack. The guy was just, he wasn't even doing anything. I was just so in my head that I left the room. I went to the bathroom, and I just like broke down. I had a nice cry fest, and I had like a little mini panic attack. I wanted to go home so bad, but I knew that was not an option. It's like, if I go home, there's no way my wife is gonna let me stick around again. She'll do what she did when I left detox,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't blame her. So yeah, I just bit the bullet and stayed. Um, and the next day, it was like it just started to get easier. It just got easier. It's like I needed to like wind it right up, and then I needed to have that little pop, and then it's like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
now I can start doing the work. I get. I'm starting to get it now. I'm surrendering. I'm even surrendering to the process more, and I thought, a pretty good group leader, And yeah, I'm still in contact with these guys that I would otherwise, like I said, never ever be in my life otherwise.
Mhm.
And it's been amazing. It's yeah.
Was it
So that was my
easy?
rubber hit the road moment.
Was it easy to buy into a higher power?
Um, yes-ish, because I remember being a kid. Like I was never religious. Like I was never, we never went to church or anything like that. Um, but when I was a kid, I did have these, I'd say, spiritual beliefs. Until I started drinking, and then it was like it truly is like once you start drinking, it takes away your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual factors of you. And yeah, it took a long time to. Well, it was weird. It was like I don't know if it was while I was in treatment. I can't remember exactly, but I do remember just thinking like, okay, this is like any other skill. I could sit and think about playing the piano. I can watch videos about playing the piano. I can uh, intellectualize what it's like to play the piano. But until I start playing the piano, I'm not going to get good at it. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I had to start like talking to a higher power. I had to start as silly as I felt. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Hey God, it's like, then you get better at it. And,
Mhm.
and it evolved, right? My spirituality evolved, my higher power evolved. Um, there was no point in intellectualizing it. I remember thinking like, who the hell am I to figure out the universe? And I think that was in the big book. Actually, at one point I read somewhere, it was like, who the hell, who the hell, like you're telling me, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have it figured out. No one has it figured out. So
Mm.
just just do it. Just know there's something. You don't have to know what it is.
Yeah.
And just trust that there's something greater than yourself. And so I was like, okay, here we go. I'm going to start practicing.
Mhm.
And I already did believe there was something greater than myself. I just had to stop thinking, trying to figure it out what it was. It didn't matter. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about so you started a podcast, and I believe we sort of started it close to the
Woo-hoo.
same time. And
Yeah.
your podcast takes a bit of a broader stroke than mine does. You touch on other mental health challenges than outside of addiction. How did it get started, and why did you choose to take such like a wide berth with like mental health in general?
Well, because my mental health, um, history. Well, it kind of started because again, it was COVID. I used to play in bands and stuff, so like I had all the equipment. I was like, well, I don't even have to buy anything.
Mhm.
So and I'd been doing some speaking and stuff, like I said, at Pine Lodge and a couple other places, and I was kind of tired of telling my own story. I had made enough connections through speaking and advocating and stuff that I knew people, or if I didn't know them, they would Google me and be like, "Oh yeah, okay, this guy's done advocating, whatever. He's legit. He's just not some goof." So I and it was just gonna be local. It was just I was just gonna have a little Saskatchewan podcast where I talked to Saskatchewan people. That was the idea. And the first few episodes were like that. I talked to like Evan Bray, the chief of police in Regina. I talked to Jason. He used to be the director of
Jason
Prairie Harm
McCurdy.
Reduction. Yeah, Jason McCurdy, Tristan DeRocher, who he did the walk and then the fasting for mental health at the legislative building for 40 days or whatever it was.
Mhm.
So it's people like that. Oh, it was I can't remember the other guy's name, but he's a speaker. He goes around talking about how he was a drunk driver and he killed a woman. He's a Saskatchewan guy. Can't think of his
Mhm.
name. Doesn't matter. So it's people like that. And then I just got hooked to it. I was like, this is I was only gonna do like maybe 8 episodes, like do a series. Um, but then the more I got into it, I was like, on social media and the more connections I made, I was like, man, I could talk about there's so much I could talk about with mental health. It could be anything from addiction to schizophrenia to trauma to depression, anxiety, yada yada yada, PTSD, like so the more I did it, just the more like things came up that I was like, I want to talk to this person. I want to talk to this person. And it just now I have 80 episodes of just people talking about mental illness and mental health, and some of them are professionals, some of them are people that lost people to either addictions or mental illness, some of them are people that are still suffering, some of them are people in recovery from addictions or whatever. And it's just been amazing. I love it. Absolutely love it. I love making the connections. I just love it. And I love that it is so broad that I don't paint myself in a corner or something. It's like,
are you suggesting I've painted myself in a corner?
Well, no, that's it. Well, addiction is big
there.
too.
There.
No, Dan. No, I mean, addiction's big enough on its own too, right? It's a pretty broad subject too, but yeah, it's cool that I could just find someone online that I think has an interesting, like, they're dog therapists or something. You know, it's like,
well,
hey,
and
I
I've
want to talk to them.
Like, I've seen some of your stuff on Instagram. You have had some very interesting guests. Tell us about some of the most like interesting guests that you've seen so far.
Well, honestly, I get something from all of them. I think they're all amazing. But
well, that's a very politically correct answer. Well done.
But it's also true. Thank you. It's also true. Well, there was that one guy. It was you, actually.
Oh, yes. Other than me. No. We were talking about how humble I was the other day, and I stand by that.
No, you didn't let me finish. There was this one guy I hated talking to, and it was you. Anyway. No. So some of the kind of the more higher profile, maybe even bizarre. I talked to Robin Williams' son, Zach. We talked about, because Zach's also in recovery. And so we talked a little about his recovery and about seeing his dad go through stuff and whatever. I've talked to people with like DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, or it's called multiple personality disorder when you're younger. I talked to, her name's Tara Newell. She, you know, the show Dirty John on Netflix? There's a TV show. Well, she's the real life person that dealt with this. She actually killed her husband's attacker, or her attacker, her mom's. Oh my God, I'm rambling. She killed her mom's husband, like, because he was a real psycho and whatever. Anyway, there's documentaries and all types of stuff on her. Like next week episode is her name is Jessica Buchanan, and she was kidnapped by Somalian land pirates and lived in the desert for 3 months. And, you know, like, her story is crazy. So those are kind of the more trauma and the more, you know, real kind of glitzy ones. Oh, Jimmy and Charnay. They're a couple that were on the Netflix show Love on the Spectrum. And they were amazing. I just love that show. So I was like, this is cool.
So where can people
I'm
find
forgetting
you?
so many, but I think pretty much anywhere that there's podcasts, like you know, Apple and Spotify and Google and a bunch of the smaller ones too. Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. And I get guests all the time ask me what the hell's with the name Bunny Hugs.
What is
so
it?
Then I explained that. Well, Bunny Hugs. So people in Saskatchewan call hoodies Bunny Hugs. Why, I don't know. So I wanted the name to have a bit of a wink or a nod to Saskatchewan, but also sound kind of cool. So it's funny because people everywhere else are like, what the hell's with the name? And then people in Saskatchewan are like, what the hell's with the name? like you're talking about mental health and
I'm
sweaters?
looking for I'm looking for something deeper. Like there's some deep and brooded like meaning, like it's a play on words or something. But no, it's just what it is, and it's a nod towards Saskatchewan sort of culture, and it talks about mental health and like that. I've honestly wondered myself what it was about, and now I know. And this is the second time that I've had you on, so it's interesting that I didn't know that yet.
Yeah, but it's funny. People outside of Saskatchewan, they love it. They're like, "What's with the name? I love it, though."
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So,
Cool, man. Well,
I love doing it, and I hope to do another 80 episodes. I can't get enough of it. But are we almost done?
I think we're done. I think we're at the end here, but we're still got to spin the wheel.
Yay!
We're gonna spin the wheel. There's the book. Okay, but not until we say the goodbye thing. So is there anything that you would like to leave us with tonight?
Well, for me, and this is unfair with mental illness, it's you have to take charge of your own health, and you can't just sit back and hope that a therapist or a pill is going to cure you. You have to do the work, and it sucks. You just want to lay in bed and cry and not do anything, but you're that's fine. Do that for a while, but eventually you have to get up and do the work, and you have to be proactive in your own health. And it's unfortunate. It's not fair, but maybe it is fair. I don't know.
Yeah.
And recovery is possible.
There we go. There's the prolific ending we were looking for. Thank you so much, my friend. It was great having you.
Thank you.
Podcast host of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. Check him out wherever you listen to podcasts. Todd, thank you so much. Take care, my friend. Good night.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, if you're getting something out of what we're doing here tonight, you can find all our audios on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or live and interactive right here on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch TV. Thanks so much for watching, my friends, and good night.
Hey, this is Hard Knox Talks.